We all take photos with our cameras or smartphones to cherish the memories we make with our loved ones, whether during special occasions or while we're living our lives as per normal. But some photos appear normal until we learn that they hide a deeper meaning, and in some cases they show some truly surprising details that might easily have been overlooked. Number 10. We rely heavily on our history books to learn more about the people who lived centuries ago. But thanks to new discoveries that are made by archaeologists every year, we've come to realize that there are gaps in our history that we never knew about. One such discovery has been made at sites close to the Nefud Desert in Saudi Arabia, and it's revealed that a previously unknown sect of desert nomads once lived in that region about 12,000 years ago. In 2025, researchers were at work at 4 different sites when they came across something remarkable. On some of the rocky outcrops in the area, they found about 130 life-sized rock carvings depicting animals that were living in the region at the time. 90 of those images depict wild camels that used to roam through the desert freely, suggesting that they were abundant at that time. The images also show wild horses, ibex, and an ancient type of cattle called aurochs. Aurochs are known to live in areas where there's a lot of water, and hence it's believed that this desert landscape was once very different. For these beasts to survive, the area would have needed a lot of rainfall, though it likely wasn't covered with greenery and grass to graze on. But it has, however, been established thanks to sediment analysis that 2 lakes used to exist in the area. These lakes would have attracted a wide array of animals, including birds, hunter-gatherers, and predators. This has changed the way archaeologists and historians look at northern Arabia, since it was always assumed that the region had always been arid and that humans would have found it impossible to survive there. We now know that at least one ancient tribe used to live in these deserts, not only thanks to the rock carvings that have been discovered, but also because of several different types of artifacts that have been unearthed. These include arrowheads, tools, and stone hearths that were used for cooking and warmth during the cold and desert nights. Some of these artifacts were found right next to the rock carvings and remained intact for thousands of years. It's further suggested that this tribe was nomadic, since the carvings of camels show them with thick coats that only appeared during the winter months. Since rainfall used to fall in the winter time in this area, it's likely that the nomads followed these camels to this region and remained there for the cold months, since water was easily accessible at the 2 lakes. They likely remained in this area for a long time, since the carvings seem to improve over time, and some are carved over others. Other travelers may have used these carvings as directions to much-needed water, as it was discovered that when they're followed, they lead directly to a shortcut through the mountain and to a nearby lake. When the team arrived at this lake, they uncovered some stone hammering tools that had been left behind, and after the sediment in which they were found was analyzed, they were discovered to be about 12,000 years old, much other than any other tools, rock paintings, or carvings that have been found elsewhere in Arabia. Another strange aspect of this find is that many of the carvings were made high above the ground, and they would have been incredibly dangerous to create. A fall could have easily proven fatal, and while we know precious little about these ancient people, it is certain that they marked their water sources well, and with good reason. Number 9. Cal Ripken Jr. is considered by many people to have been the greatest shortstop in all of baseball history. He holds the record for the most consecutive games played in the major leagues, and has been inducted into the MLB Hall of Fame. But not everyone knows that in 2012, his mother Violet, better known as V, lived through a terrifying ordeal that resulted in a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. It all started on the evening of the 24th of May that year, when, at around 8 p.m., a married couple in White Marsh, Maryland, became suspicious when they saw a silver car parked near the intersection of Ebenezer Road and the Pulaski Highway. What struck them as strange was that the man standing outside the car was wearing gloves. It was the middle of summer, and he certainly would not have needed to keep his hands warm. When they spotted an elderly woman sitting in the car with a strange type of mask on, they decided to investigate, since the car was parked on their property. As they approached the car, their suspicions only grew when they noticed that a white piece of material was covering up the back window on the driver's side. As they neared the man in question, they both started to feel uneasy. and when they asked him who the woman in the car was, he replied that it was his mother, who was suffering from Alzheimer's. He then jumped in the car and drove away at a high rate of speed, but the couple was able to copy the car's license plate number, and they contacted the police to report that they believed they'd encountered a kidnapping in progress. When the license plate number was checked, it was discovered that the car belonged to 74-year-old V, and when the police went to her house to check on her, they became concerned when it was apparent she wasn't there. She'd clearly been abducted, and her neighbors reported seeing a suspicious pickup truck driving up and down the street on several occasions over the course of the previous few days. The following morning, Violet was found still in her car by a neighbor who was returning home. Her abductor had left her in the vehicle, and she was spotted because she was waving a sweatshirt out of the window while honking the horn. After she was brought back home, she explained that on the morning of the abduction, she entered her garage to find a strange man standing there. He was wearing a ski mask and gloves and threatened to harm her. She was told to get into the car, after which he bound her hands and ankles and blindfolded her. He then taped her glasses so that she couldn't see and placed her in the back seat. For the rest of the day, the man merely drove around with this hostage, and at one point, he covered one of the windows so that she wouldn't be seen. He stopped for gas and food several times and assured V he wasn't planning on hurting her. He even shared his food with her, and she soon realized that he had no idea that she was the mother of a famous baseball player. He never asked for money, never harmed her, and despite the fact that the man's photo was gathered from CCTV footage, he was never identified, and the motive for the kidnapping remains a mystery. Number 8. In February of 2001, Michael Gargiulo was living in Glenview, Illinois, and one night he walked to the house of his next-door neighbor, 22-year-old fashion student Ashley Alarin. He'd helped her with a few odd jobs around her house in the past, but on this night, he had nefarious intentions. As soon as he entered the house, he attacked her and ended her life with a sharpened blade. She was discovered by one of her roommates the next day, and the police started an investigation. Little did they know that Ashley wasn't the first life that he had taken. When he was just 17 years old, Gargiulo attacked his then neighbor, 18-year-old Trisha Pacasio, on her back doorstep. He'd also used a blade in that attack and ended her life, but as soon as he fell under suspicion, he relocated to Los Angeles. But back in California, he then met Ashley and ended her life, and 4 years later, on the 1st of December 2005, he attacked yet another neighbor, 32-year-old Maria Bruno, in El Monte, California, once again using a blade to carry out the crime. On the 28th of April 2008, he attacked his 26-year-old neighbor, Michelle Murphy, in Santa Monica, but she fought back bravely, and when Gargiulo injured himself during the struggle, he fled. But he left biological material at the scene, and after it was analyzed, he was finally arrested. He was charged with several counts of first-degree murder, and he hinted that he'd ended the lives of as many women as 10. Famously, one of the witnesses called to the stand during the trial was famous actor Ashton Kutcher. He explained that on the night that Ashley was attacked, they were supposed to go out on a date. But when he arrived at her house late, he got no answer at her door. When he looked through a window, he noticed what he believed to be red wine stains on the floor, and he left, assuming that his tardiness had angered her and that she was no longer interested in going out. Gargiulo was found guilty of the charges against him, and on the 16th of July, 2021, he was handed the death penalty. But not all the mysteries in this case have been solved. A photo of Gargiulo and an unknown woman continues to baffle investigators, since they have no idea who she is, and they believe she may be another of his victims. In this photo, and several others that have been made available to the public, Gargiulo and the woman are seen hugging and kissing, suggesting they were in a romantic relationship at some point. It's believed that it was taken in 2001 or 2002, around the same time that he attacked Ashley. She's believed to be in her early 20s, and in the photo, she seems happy to be in his company, and likely had no knowledge of the heinous crimes he'd committed. Number 7. Some mysteries, especially those involving aspects of the paranormal, are seemingly impossible to solve. In some cases, people are left at their wits' end when items in their houses, such as furniture and crockery, start to move around by themselves, or they hear disembodied voices and footsteps that they're unable to locate or explain. In others, people see what they can only explain as apparitions that are believed to be haunting a house, church, or even a ship, as was the case with a photo taken aboard such a vessel in 2014 by an unsuspecting dock foreman. In September of that year, a decommissioned military frigate was brought into a port at a location that's not been disclosed by the media. The plan was for the vessel to be broken down, after which the metal would be salvaged and used as scrap. By the time this mystery started to unfold, the ship had been docked for about 2 weeks, but before it could be broken down, there was a lot of work that still needed to be completed. Equipment had to be removed from many rooms of the ship, along with sensitive documents and other items that were then returned to the US Navy. This took some time to complete, but once it was done, dock workers were free to go onto the ship, and the first to do so was a dock worker who'd been tasked with taking photos of every room aboard the ship. This was requested by his foreman, who wanted to make sure that all of the necessary items had been removed before work could begin on dismantling the vessel. He asked the worker, a man named John, to email the photos to him as soon as he was done, and John obliged. He meticulously walked through each room, taking photos while also double-checking that the preemptive work had been carried out correctly. He ended up taking almost 200 photos, which he then sent to his foreman as requested. He believed that everything would be found in order, and that he would soon receive the go-ahead to start breaking the ship down. But then he received a phone call that left him and his fellow workers baffled. The foreman, sounding perplexed, asked who the axe-wielding man aboard the ship was, and John, having no idea who he was referring to, simply stated he hadn't seen anyone aboard while taking the photos. The foreman then emailed him the photo in question, pointing out that in one of the rooms, a man could be seen peering out from behind a corner with what appeared to be an axe in his hand. John had never seen the man because this photo was taken in the bowels of the ship. Every time he took a photo, he would turn his flashlight on, leaving him in complete darkness, and once he was done with that room, he would move on to the next. After studying the photo closely, John explained that the man in question was certainly not any of the dock workers that he knew, and the police were informed. The ship was searched thoroughly, but to no avail, which was strange since there was only one way to get off the ship, a gangway that was monitored by CCTV cameras. When the footage of that day was reviewed, it showed no sign of the mysterious figure, leading many people to believe that it was in fact a ghost or some otherworldly apparition. Number 6. The Pisco Holes, also known as the Band of Holes and Serpent Mountain, are located on the Pisco Valley of the Nazca Plateau in Peru. And these strange formations have left researchers baffled ever since they were first reported on in the 1930s. These reports were made by an aviator called Robert Shippey, who flew over the area at one point, and after taking a few aerial photos of the strange holes, decided to have them published in the National Geographic magazine. Each of these holes measures about 3 feet across, and most are between 20 and 40 inches deep. Some were created by digging into mounds of soil, while others were built from the ground up using stones and rocks found in the area. Flying above the area provides the observer with a truly remarkable sight. The band of holes stretches over a large area, and from the air looks like a crude path or dry riverbed that's been carved into the ground. While they are a true bafflement, not many people have traveled to the area to study them. But in 1953, an American explorer called Victor Wolfgang von Hagen decided to investigate, and he was the first person to suggest a hypothesis as to what they may be. He felt that they were used as a burial site, but that the remains that were buried there had been removed for reasons unknown. He also suggested that there were about 5,000 of these graves scattered around the area. But not everyone was convinced, since there was very little evidence to support this theory. No human remains were found at the site, and it seemed illogical that these graves would be disturbed, unless it was done with nefarious intent. In 1984, John Hislop, an archaeologist, stated in a book that he had authored that the holes may have been used for storage a very long time ago. He'd seen a similar site on the south coast of Peru years earlier, and in that case, it was determined that people used them to store guano, which is bat droppings, which could be used as fertilizer to help grow crops. It was confirmed in 2015 by a team of University of California researchers that the area does indeed contain as many as 6,000 of these holes or depressions, and they date back to around the 15th century. This theory was suggested after an Incan road and pottery were found nearby, and they supported the theory that the holes were used as storage. But there's another theory that they were used in commerce. When farmers brought grain or other items to the king as tribute, the holes may have been used to measure how much of that item was brought before they appeared before the king. If the produce didn't fill the hole entirely, that tribute may have been seen as insufficient. Number 5. This photo may seem completely innocent and even endearing, as it seems to depict a son and his elderly mother about to embark on a short boat trip in Melbourne, Australia. But the truth is far more bizarre than that. The two people who can be seen in the image are 56-year-old Adrian Menevo and his mother, 83-year-old Felicity Loveday. At this very moment, they're about to leave the shore at Oliver's Hill boat ramp in Frankston, and the date that the photo was taken was on the 11th of December 2019. This was also not meant to be a short trip, as the pair had decided to travel on the boat for 3 days. Before they set off, Adrian's sister Christina decided to take a snapshot of the moment, unaware that she would never see either of them again. When they failed to return 3 days later as expected, Christina started to worry, and she contacted the police to report her mother and brother as missing. What this image doesn't reveal is that Felicity had been suffering from dementia for some time, and that Adrian had been taking care of her for about 7 years. In an effort to improve her condition, Felicity had started practicing meditation and other spiritual practices, but Adrian didn't approve of this, as he believed it filled her with what he called bad magic. He felt that he needed to find a way to remove this bad magic, since his mother was too frail to do so on her own, and the boat trip was supposed to achieve this, since he believed the salt water would cleanse her spirit. Adrian had bought the boat in Christina's name and took out insurance before they set out on the trip. But this behavior in the days before they set sail caused investigators some concerns. He sent all of his online passwords, banking details, and a will to Christina, and instructed that his entire estate would be left to her. It was also later discovered that he had searched the words sea burial on the internet just days before the trip was scheduled to take place. Christina filed a missing person report on the 14th of December. The case struck investigators as strange, since they felt Felicity was too frail to last on a fishing vessel for 3 days. Furthermore, conditions on the water over those 3 days were not conducive to such a small boat being out for an extended period, but Adrian never turned back. A search was conducted, and on the 15th of December, the boat was found adrift in the bay. It was empty, and the engine had been turned off, but it held no clue as to where Adrian and Felicity had gone. Soon after, 2 life jackets, matching the ones worn by the pair, were found in the water, and it's now believed that both the mother and son perished in the water sometime during the trip. Number 4. The case of the tragic passing of 24-year-old Matrice Richardson has left a lot of people angered over the belief that she should have been taken better care of by the police in Malibu in 2009. The case started on the 17th of September that year when she had dinner at a Malibu restaurant called Jeffrey's, ordering $89 worth of food and drinks while she was there. But when she failed to pay her bill, the police were called and she was arrested. But her failure to pay wasn't the main reason for her being taken into custody. Staff and customers at the restaurant reported that she'd been acting very strangely and erratically, and when officers arrived, they witnessed the same behavior. The details have not been shared by the authorities, but it was reported that she tried to engage several people, including the valet, in conversation about bizarre subjects, and she was transported to the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station after being subjected to and passing a field sobriety test, which means she wasn't intoxicated. Once there, investigators had the option to send Matrice for a psychiatric evaluation so that it could be determined whether she should be released or not, but this was never done. The second option was to hold her at the station overnight so that she could be properly observed, but instead they chose the less arduous path. Despite the fact that she'd been seen clutching the screen of the holding pen and rocking back and forth for some time, Matrice was released from the station at around midnight that same night. She'd never been in that area before, and hence was completely unfamiliar with her surroundings, and she had no food, water, or extra clothing with her. Even more bizarre is the fact that she was told to leave without anyone close to her being notified. despite the police knowing she didn't have a cell phone with her. She had no way of contacting anyone. She wasn't offered a ride home and was left to her own devices. When questioned about this, the officers involved stated they didn't see any signs that Matrice was going through a mental health episode. But this was contradicted by every single person that she interacted with at the restaurant that night. A surveillance photo from the station shows Matrice being released by a deputy, after which she disappeared into the hills of Malibu. For the next 10 months, no one saw or heard from her, and there were fears she may have become stranded somewhere with no way of making her way home. The truth is that she walked about 7 miles into the wilderness, and there her remains were found. The investigation only got stranger as her remains were removed before a coroner could investigate the scene to determine the reason for her passing, the time at which it occurred, and whether she had indeed lost her life in that spot. What followed was branded as a cover-up by many people. Staff at the station were found to be untruthful about what happened that night. Protocols had been violated, evidence was withheld, and soon allegations of neglect were made. Then Captain Tom Martin claimed that there was no footage of Matrice while she was being held at the station, but the tape containing the footage was later found in his own desk drawer. Furthermore, when her mother approached the station to file a missing person report, she was told to wait before doing so, but she was never told why. It's a truly troubling case that has changed the lives of Matrice's family forever, and they're hoping to soon receive the answers they've been looking for. Number 3. A discovery that was made in Kenya's desert badlands in 2001 may rewrite the way that we think about how we as humans develop the ability to fashion and use tools that were created out of nothing more than rock. Before this discovery was made, experts used to believe that tool making started about 2.8 million years ago. But in 2011, an archaeologist from Stony Brook University was conducting research at Lake Turkana in the Rift Valley of Kenya when she noticed something truly unusual. Scattered on the ground near the water was what she at first believed to be rudimentary stone artifacts, and she gathered a few up for further study. Other artifacts had been found in the area years earlier when excavations were carried out, and hence she believed she'd stumbled across a trove of more of these items. But when she studied the items found on the surface, she realized that several fit neatly into items that had been uncovered from the soil, and that they were connected. The sediment in which the tools were found was dated to 3.3 million years ago, using paleomagnetic dating. This is significant since the items have now been identified as tools that were used around that time, and they predate the oldest known tools that were discovered in Gona, Ethiopia, by at least a few 100,000 years. After this discovery was made, it became clear that we have more to learn about our history of tool creation. It's believed that they were carved by the Kenyanthropus platypus human relative that was discovered in Kenya in 1998. Number 2. Photography has a long and complicated history that dates all the way back to 1826 or 1827, since that's the first time that a photo was ever taken. The person responsible was Joseph Niepce, who decided to experiment with the view outside his house in Burgundy, France. While the resulting image may not make much sense to the modern eye, showing blurred shapes and only vaguely resembles some stonework, it paved the way towards what we now know as photography. That very photo is still on display at the Ransom Center at the University of Texas, and its importance cannot be overstated. Even after this photo was taken, it took a further 200 years for the art form to take off. It was only in 1838 when Louis Daguerre set up his camera to take a photo of the Boulevard du Temple in Paris that the first ever photo of a human was taken. He used a method known as daguerreotype, which required at least 7 minutes of exposure for the image to develop. Thus, anything that was moving around, such as horse-drawn carriages, people walking on the sidewalk, or birds flying by, would not have been captured in the image. But these were not Daguerre's intended subjects. He merely wanted to preserve an image of that area around him, and in the process, accidentally captured the first ever photo of a person. The image of the area is surprisingly clear since it was exposed for 10 minutes, and it shows buildings in the foreground, as well as the street leading between them. Several trees can be seen lining the street on both sides, but as one looks into the distance, the details become less clear. But in the bottom left corner of the photo, 2 distinct figures can be seen on the street corner. A man had stopped to have his shoes shined by a young boy. And since this took some time to complete, he and the boy were included in the long exposure without their knowledge. It's now considered to be the first ever example of portraiture, though most people who've had their portraits taken do so willingly. The rest of the street, sidewalk, and the surrounding area seems completely empty, but many people would have been bustling around at the time. The fact that they were moving means that they simply didn't show up in the photo, and had it been taken with a modern camera, the scene would be much more lively and exciting. Nevertheless, the importance of this photo is significant, since it was, for quite some time, believed that the first photo of a human was taken in the 1840s. But when Daguerre's image was discovered, the history of photography was rewritten. Number 1. Rodney Alcala is better known as the notorious dating game serial killer, a moniker that he received after his crimes came to light. It was discovered that he had appeared on the dating game show in September of 1978. Luckily, the woman who chose him above the other male contestants decided not to go on a date with him, since he struck her as creepy and strange, despite the fact that he described himself as a successful photographer. The pair won a trip to the Magic Mountain theme park, as well as tennis lessons that they would receive together. But the woman told Alcala that she didn't want to go on the date, and that she didn't want to see him again since he was acting so strangely. A fellow contestant also later stated he found Alcala's behavior behind the scenes of the show to be bizarre. He recounted that while they were in the green room, he suddenly burst and declared that he always got his girl, a statement that, in retrospect, sends shivers down one's spine. But what no one knew at the time was that Alcala had been an active serial killer for close to a year. On the 9th of November, 1977, he ended the life of Jill Barcone in Oneida, New York. Her murder was at first attributed to the Hillside Strangler, but it was later determined that Alcala was responsible. A month later, he attacked and ended the life of 27-year-old Georgia Wickstead in Malibu. She was reported missing after missing a shift at her hospital where she was working as a nurse, and when the police conducted a welfare check, she was found deceased in her apartment. Alcala's handprint was also discovered and kept as evidence. He then ended the life of 32-year-old Charlotte Lamb in El Segundo in June that next year, and Alcala's DNA was collected at the crime scene. Following this, he appeared on the dating game, before then attacking a hitchhiker named Monique Hoyt, who somehow managed to escape the horrific ordeal. She contacted the police and Alcala was arrested, but his mother posted his bail. His crime spree then continued as he ended the lives of 21-year-old Jill Parento in June of 1979 and Robin Samso just over a month later. A composite sketch of the attacker was created, and when Alcala's parole officer recognized him, he was taken into custody once more. This time, he was not offered bail, and in August of 1986 he received the death penalty after a second trial. In March of 2010, over 1,000 photos were found in Alcala's locker depicting some of his victims and other unknown women. 120 of these photos were made public, and 21 women came forward to report that they were the ones in the photos. Many families contacted the police to state that some of the women depicted had gone missing around the time that the photos were taken, and they were assumed to be additional victims. But there is one photo that still baffles investigators. It shows Alcala in the company of a woman who's sitting on his lap, clearly none the wiser of his heinous crimes. It's not known where this photo was taken, but it's dated to a time before he appeared on the game show, and the police have asked that anyone who recognizes her come forward, so that she can either be included or excluded as one of his victims. Alcala was never executed since he passed away from a heart attack while being treated at Kings County Hospital in July of 2021. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.